Here we are for another epic journey through this Illuminati occult that we've been investigating for the whole course of 2023, starting from the very first week of January. We are now at part 45, Legends and Stories of Real Vampires. Or the real vampires. I think it's actually legend story of real vampires. You put on the so I need to correct after I had written of the real vampires. Okay. In any case, this is an important episode because you're gonna learn a lot about what really goes on with vampires. They're not just a folkloristic curiosity of sorts, or maybe a fixation of some eccentric gods. You will learn today there is some real connections with the Illuminati, and it is very important for us to know more about also psychic vampires and all the various connections with their own world, with their own living. And so it's important to realize that you might even encounter vampires that don't know they are vampires. So this is going to be a very interesting episode. And it's, of course, Leo and Christy Zagami together for part 45. Here we go.
Hi, everyone.
And we couldn't do all this, of course, without the help of the sponsors. You are the sponsors. So, Christy, who are the sponsors of today?
Thank you for everybody who donated this week to sponsor the show. We have Daniel Estes. Thank you very much. Margarizada Minta. Hi, Margarizada. Thank you. Philippe Biller. Thank you, Philippe. Bruce Kodish. Always thank you, Bruce. Calvin Fadi and Bjorn Vogel. Those are new donations. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. We like to actually give an applause to our sponsors because they deserve an applause. So here we go with our applause.
Yay, thank you. You have to do the real dance. Sorry.
Sorry.
They didn't dance enough. They have to dance more. Dance. They like the dance.
Okay, let's get into this important episode though, because there's a lot we need to say, and of course it's a very, very important show that I would like to conduct in a way that people realize also that vampires are not just a simple curiosity that we can find in a movie, but of course the dance is important. Okay. Well, this is Leo Zagami with the Leo Zagami Show with Christy. Saturday, December 9 of the year of the Lord 2023. We are proceeding towards the end of the year when we will end up this exploration that will then have its grand finale when we will then go through all the various episodes in a special episode. Okay, so
it's like a recap of all the episodes.
A recap of all of what we have done. No? It's been a long journey, it's a long journey, and I think we have produced some great results. So if you want to help us, we also remind you that you can donate through GoFundMe and through Cash App. So let me put it here on the screen. We no longer have, of course, PayPal. We've been banned several times, but you can use actually PayPal with GoFundMe. So I want to put it here on the screen because a lot of people seem to still use GoFundMe. We are no longer using, for the moment, Fundly or any other platform. So we stick to GoFundMe.
I have a cute skirt on today, but nobody can see it. So
I'm
stand up. I still can't see it.
I hope you don't get seen by a vampire.
Well, you kind of look like you crawled out of a coffin.
Okay.
Just kidding. Well, no, not really,
I,
but kind of.
I have the more traditional Nosferatu look. Why they call him Nosferatu?
You don't look like Nosferatu.
No,
That's the ugly one.
That's the ugly one. You like more Bella Lugosi.
You look more like Bella Lugosi.
Okay, so let's because we're gonna also talk about these things. I mean, it's important to also talk about films that connect with the with the truth about vampires. And Nosferatu was truly connected with some vampires. It wasn't a joke. It was a movie that came out in Germany in the 1920s. The wife of Bram Stoker sued them because of the copyright infringement on Dracula, even if they had changed the names. And then, well, I mean, we will discuss a little bit what happened because it's definitely very interesting. But first of all, let's go and start this unfolding because did we make up our vampire stories based on something, on an existing creature, or was the creature created by our belief in its existence in a way? A monster formed by the mass, the force of all the belief of people which is incarnated, is a theme which appeared with the discovery of the unconscious with Freud, and later on with the collective unconscious of Carl Gustav Jung shortly after. If we are all familiar, of course, with the literature and film production surrounding around vampires, what do we really know about this phenomenon? So it's important that today we understand what does the science say about it. Does it support the hypothesis of past centuries? All these legends that we're going to cover today. The first question consists of defining the very notion of death, because the vampire is projected towards immortality in some way, but also that of blood, and of course the involvement of the Illuminati and, like I said earlier, psychic vampires. Now, I would like to give a few questions here to Christy also, because I know that she's been very interested with this subject since a very early age. You kind of like, though, the Bela Lugosi version, no?
I just like the romantic story behind it, but I don't like the actual like blood sucking and anything to do with veins and blood. But I like that part of it. That's it. Just the man with the suit that comes in through the window and saves the woman and takes her away. Woo!
Because it was created, it was carefully crafted, that image of the vampire. And now today I will explain who it was actually based on, inspired from, and because in reality, vampires have not always been these very suave gentlemen, but it's part of what we are trying to analyze today. Blood is also part of it, but like we said, you have also psychic vampires that draw from the energy force, which is not necessarily blood. Now, unlike other bodily fluids, though, which man has primary knowledge, the loss of which is not fatal, because if saliva, urine, perspiration is not fatal, blood is something that if we lose, it brings us to certain death. That is very important. It is the vehicle of the power of life, but also that of contagion and disease, infection due to injury, hemophilia, for example, HIV, which leads, of course, to AIDS and other contaminations, all through blood. So many misunderstood things, in a way, have been attributed since the Middle Ages to the actions of demons accused of causing epidemics. These themes are particularly recurrent in the vampire, as is the bite itself, or the exchange of his blood is seen as the transmission of a disease. But let's not forget, for example, also the work of Rudolf Steiner about the importance of blood in ritual, in the Faustian pact with the devil. Vampires, in a way, have been even described as a race of their own, the product of maybe some ungodly interaction between witches and the devil, witches and elemental spirits. There is, though, it's very important to understand, though, the importance of blood as, of course, the center, the heart of life. And it is obvious food for life thieves rich in the life energy. Let's say that blood, it's even, today we have modern vampires, all these people who go and exchange their blood and throw it away every 6 months, like the Rolling Stones before they go on tour, and they stay young. These are constant. These are practices, or people involved in sports who have been doing this practice, which is actually irregular now. I mean, it's judged as irregular. It should be illegal also by sport courts. I mean, especially people who go in bikes, they change their blood so they can incentivate and become and win actually the competition. So blood is actually, I mean, it's something that is being used. In any case, we have blood in powerful ancient cults as also, like, I mean, I just said, it's the elixir of life for many who believe, they can draw from this blood, the blood maybe of some young, youthful virgin, their powers. I mean, that was the idea. One of the first people to be accused of being a vampire, but there were also many others. Vampires, they are both men and women. It's not an exclusivity of one or the other. It doesn't have a preference. Elizabeth Báthory was definitely Countess Elizabeth Báthory, one of the very first figures. I want to show you her image. She and her servants killed hundreds and tortured hundreds of women, and did the most.
Only women?
Only women. She bathed in the blood of virgins. That was. Some say that it was, it was like maybe a later legend, but in reality, she was definitely a criminal of sorts, because the charges leveled against her have described her as a witch, but others say maybe it was a witch hunt, maybe there was something else behind it. It definitely became part of national folklore in Hungary, where she came from. And she was born of this important royal family. She had a great estate. She spent her childhood in a castle. And of course, she was connected with all the various Hungarian nobles and also other relatives who were very important, like, for example, the King of Poland, the Prince of Transylvania. So it means and we go back to that area, which of course is typical of the later Bram Stoker fascination around this subject, which then materialized in his own version of Count Dracula. She was basically a very controversial figure. A very controversial figure because at one point she will be arrested on the 13th of December, 1612. She will not be killed. She will be arrested and, of course, locked up in a castle, while her servants, 4 of her servants who were accused of being her accomplices, will will be probably sentenced to death after, while instead, of course, she was an aristocrat, so she couldn't be sentenced to death. But she did things that were apparently terrible, with not one victim, but many victims. Her family, which ruled Transylvania, sought to avoid the loss of also their property and the risk of being seized by the crown. So this was something that became a real scandal. Now, we don't really know to what level she was a vampire, or rather she was just a serial killer and just a maniac. The veracity of the accusations are definitely there. There is around 300 witnesses that support the fact that she basically killed numerous girls and used her blood. And the case, of course, inspired the numerous stories. She became very popular. Even a Jesuit scholar dedicated a work to her. So that gives us an introduction to this subject, but of course we don't have only the aristocrats involved. We will have even a peasant who will become one of the biggest vampires. But of course, a peasant will not be so ideal for them, you know, translating it into maybe into a book character. However, the first case of a vampire is basically Peter Plogovic, a Serbian peasant, which remains to this day the most famous case of historical vampire. What does it mean, historical vampire? It means that at one point they went and dug up his grave and found out that the guy was maybe still alive or is still a thing. Now, in this case, it was Peter Blagovic. I'm gonna show you on Wikipedia, his Wikipedia, just so to give an idea. A Serbian peasant who was believed to have become a vampire after his death and to have killed 9 of his fellow villagers. The case was the earliest one and one of the most sensational and most well-documented case of vampire hysteria. It was described in the report of Imperial Provisor Ernest Frompel, an official of the Austrian administration, witnessed this staking of Blagovic.
Staking.
Yes. Scholars have noted the influence of Blagovic's case upon the development of the modern vampire in Western culture. He lived in a village where then after he died, apart from the fact that apparently in this village there have been also some previous cases, but the inhabitants got to be persecuted by this figure. And then I mean, personally, I think there is always some kind of truth in all these legends, because this is one of the many. Imagine that only 1 year later, this came out in 1725, this whole story of this Peter Blagovic. But then the year after, an Austrian soldier, always a peasant, called Arnold Paul, who died in 1726, was the cause of 2 epidemics of vampirism. The second of which, in January 1731, was the subject of a detailed report. And Arnold Paul case was similar to that of Peter Blagovic, became famous, of course, in Austria, and then they went and saw the process of the corpse decomposition, because that's really when they confirm that it is a vampire, when they see that it wasn't. In this case, though, you always have to think that anything can happen, but it's also possible that a lot of these people, like in the case of another guy that also is said to be a vampire, Johannes Kuntius of Silesia, there might be the possibility that maybe he went in coma and then he wasn't buried covered. So, they put him alive in the coffin in coma. The guy, in this case, this is a very interesting story, Kunz und Johannes, because this story, vampirism, let's remember, vampirism also became a serious problem for the Catholic Church. It became almost a political subject. Because the Catholic Church, of course, believes in hell and purgatory. The fact that there was these people that come back to life, in theory, the vampire is a dead person, is not found in any of these three categories, since his soul is still wandering, on earth. Yeah. It became a problem in a way for the Catholic dogma of purgatory and therefore for the power of the church. So they investigated very much this subject. When it comes to this particular 16th century guy, there is the fact also that is speculated that he made a pact with the devil. And basically, this pact with the devil made him wealthy, and he even said that he sold his child to Satan. So, all these things, and that the night of his death, a cat allegedly arrived on him and scratched him, and then after, there is a lot of things that, of course, can be the stuff of myth, of legend, but here we are defining the basis of these legends that then Bram Stoker transformed in his Count Dracula. Because and Bram Stoker was not even the guy who really picked up this vampirism and for the first time and transformed it. Let me put here once again so I can. We are broadcasting live at the moment on Facebook, on YouTube, of course, and you can help us with GoFundMe. We have already, of course, mention the sponsors of today. We will mention them again at the end of the show because we want to really thank them for giving us the opportunity to come back on the air today, like we do every week, and dig deeper and deeper into a subject, not superficially. Now, a lot of people out there will definitely say, but what does all this have to do with the Illuminati? Aha! It has a lot to do with the Illuminati. It has a lot to do with Aleister Crowley, for example. So I think it's very important that, first of all, apart from the fact that, in a way, the blood-sucking vampire is a symbolic of something which is more the psychic vampire. Psychic vampire attacks from, in a way, the subject. And like I said, it can, like I said earlier, it can do it knowingly or even unknowingly. Most of the time, vampires, psychic vampires, don't realize that they are draining the people close to them of their energy.
I've been around these psychic vampires. It's like you feel like you get around somebody and like after being around them, you just don't feel as good as when you started, you feel maybe tired or even depressed or sad, or just your energy changes with that person. And, they try to just suck you into they take your energy. They're good. Your good energy.
Well, yeah, no, but in fact, even Eliphas Levi.
But is that true? Do they really take your energy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, Eliphas Levi himself discuss the subject of vampire in his dogmas and rituals of high magic. He basically, and I'm going to make you read this passage of Eliphas Levi's work on the vampire, so you can understand the knowledge here.
I can't read it. It's too small, and I don't know if I can read that.
Okay, let me see if I can make it bigger.
Such beings who are poisonous fungi of the human race absorb the life of living beings in their fullest possible extent.
To the fullest possible.
And this is why their proximity depletes the soul and chills the heart. If such corpse-like creatures really exist, they would stand for all that was recounted in former times about
Brucalesque and vampires.
Now are there not certain persons in whose presence are you better read it.
Now, are there not certain persons in whose presence one feels less intelligence, less good, sometimes even less honest? Are there not some whose vicinity extinguishes all faith and all enthusiasm, who draws you by your weakness, who govern your body by your evil propensities, and make you die slowly to morality in a torment like that of Mezentius? These are dead people who we mistake for living beings. These are vampires who we regard as friends. This was Eliphas Levi in The Doctrine of Transcendental Magic. Don't you recognize what you said earlier in the words of Eliphas Levi?
I read that book also. So.
Well, I mean, and of course, there is also all the work that was done by the Unfortunate. But before arriving to the Unfortunate, there is a figure that really brings this connection between the cinematic version of Dracula and the real-time vampires, not the posers. The posers, I will show you the posers. There's a lot of posers. You go to New Orleans and there is a lot of posers that pretend to be vampires. I'm talking about the serious vampires, the ones that have to do with the Illuminati. So here we go. There is a guy called Albin Grau. Albin Grau was the producer of the Nosferatu movie of 1922. The interesting thing about all this is that the main energy that the psychic vampires use is basically the prana energy. The prana energy, the life force, and his company to produce this movie was called Prana. And now I'm going to show you some very interesting things about this guy, because here you will understand. I mean, because people will say, but Zagami is showed to the vampires. No. This is because we're talking seriously about the Illuminati here. This is an exploration into the Illuminati. And of course, here it says, architect and occultist and the producer of Nosferatu. And this will be the only film he ever produces, because then the wife of Bram Stoker will try to sue them, actually sued them, and manage to get all the copies out of circulations. The ones that we see today are the surviving copies, because most copies were destroyed. The wife of Bram Stoker, who was pretty desperate without any money, when she received a letter that this film had came out in Germany, this film at that time came out only in Germany, but later on, in 1922, it would then also come out in Ireland and in England. In fact, last year they celebrated the centenary of the film. Here it says, a lifelong student of the occult and member of Fraternitas Saturni, under the magical name of Master Pasitius, Grau was able to imbue Nosferatu with hermetic and mystical undertones. Perfect. But also he was the participant of the Vida Conference. Now, the Vida Conference was the conference in which Aleister Crowley was decided as Grand Master for the world of the OTO. And there was a division in the Illuminati in Germany at that time at the end. And he sided with Crowley. And it says here, I mean, I'm not telling you anything that's not said. Can you read here this part? I put it, I make it bigger.
Okay. In 1925, Grau participated in the Ouida Conference, an international meeting of occult leaders at Hohenlauben, along with
Lodge Secretary Eugen Grosch. No, because after if I make it bigger, we will lose the board. But like this, okay. So he went there with Eugen Grosch, who was Frater Gregorius. And we will talk about him later, but please continue. Then there was also the master of the Danzig Lodge, Otto Gebardi, Frater Iquil. There was Gebardi lovers, Martha Kunzel, Soror Iquil Hess. There was a guy who was very powerful in the Illuminati at that time, Henrik Tranker. Frater Rectnatus, head of the Rosicrucian Occult Lodge Collegium Pansophonico aka Pansophonic Orient Lodge Berlin, in the Orient of Berlin, and his wife Ellen, and of course Aleister Crowley with his whole entourage, Lee Ersick, Dorothy Olsen, and Norman Booth, Grau, and there was also the guy who will then become Crowley's representative later on in America. So there was a lot of people in this conference. The conference was not a smooth event, and Tranker withdrew his support of Crowley. See? Remember, it's 1925. Nosferatu had already come out. So Grau was the producer of a film who was very important. At this point, the differences between Tranker and Crowley led to a schism in the Pansophical Lodge between the brothers who disagreed with Crowley and those who accepted Crowley's law of Thelema, because Crowley, with his usually messianic fixations of being the word of the new aeon and bringing the law of Thelema, and they all had to accept the book of the law of the Illuminati, he created this schism. But you see, Gregorius, the ones who accepted Crowley's law were Gregorius and Grau. And they broke from the Pansophical Lodge, and then Gregorius will create the Fraternitas Saturni. This is very important because these are real vampires, not the jokes. And of course, you can see that this guy is a real vampire because, I mean, apart from reading his work and the titles of his books, but just let's see the figure. You know, this was the real vampire, and you can pretty much notice. I mean, the real Nosferatu of the time
looks like him,
and he was the lodge secretary.
Oh my goodness!
Imagine then.
Oh, who does he look like?
Well,
he looks like. I can't think of it now, but I'll think of it.
Now, there is a film that was produced by Nicolas Cage. This film is very important, and there is a trailer here I want to show you. And why is important? There is a reason why it's important, because the character of Grau is portrayed in the movie, and is a movie that came out not so long ago. So here I have it. I got it from a copy that hopefully is not going to give us any copyright problems. And it's called The Shadow of the Vampire. Year 2000. So Nicolas Cage wasn't not only fixated with vampires today, as he did that movie not so long ago, just recently actually. He was fixated behind the scenes with this whole subject. This film was a film about the making of Nosferatu, which was connected to real occultists, real vampires, real people.
I want to see it.
Okay, this is a trailer of it.
Roll camera. Iris in. Begin.
It's been a fitful night, but you wake refreshed. What is that beside you? It's a book about vampires. Nosferatu.
Director F.W. Murnau had an obsession to create the world's most realistic vampire movie.
Meet Count Olog.
You see the guy that is next to the camera is supposed to be Grau. Not that this is a famous scene from Nosferatu, but this here portrayed by that great actor, which let me see the name of that actor, because the shadow. Can you put the air conditioning down a second? Okay, so we are showing you here this movie, the trailer of the movie, of course, from the year 2000. The film stars at John Malkovich, William Dafoe, but there is also starring Udo Kier, which is a very great actor. And Udo Kier is basically portraying the part of Albin Grau, who we just been talking about, because he was the producer of the film. So here we go. Let's see if we can get it to work. Yeah, see, this is him, supposed to be him. On the right, you have John Malkovich. On the left, Udo Grier, in the portraying Grau. See if we can make it work.
Vampire movie.
Meet Count Olog.
The overture to our Symphony of Horrors.
He dug up an actor
I'd like some makeup.
Well, you don't get any.
who didn't just play the part.
But you're not feeding.
No, you're not drinking her blood.
He lived it.
What is the matter with you?
Where did you find him, really?
From Lionsgate Films and producer Nicolas Cage comes the haunting tale of the uncompromising,
You will have no close-ups now.
the unimaginable,
Blood! Blood!
and the undead. Academy Award nominees John Malkovich
I will finish my picture!
and Willem Dafoe.
This is hardly your picture any longer.
Shadow of the Vampire.
How dare you destroy my photographer? Why not the script girl?
I'll eat her later.
Well, that was, last year, like I said, it was, some people will wonder, why does Nicolas Cage produce this kind of movie? Nicolas Cage is a guy who studies alchemy. I actually found him as connected to this guy I went to visit in Fort Collins, John Compact. He was his disciple. John Compact had one of the biggest occult libraries here in the US. So, Nicolas Cage is somebody who really is fixated with alchemy, goes to conferences, studies, and all these kind of things. So the fact that he wanted to produce this movie, definitely it's part of who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Nosferatu's vampire scene, definitely this one is the key of the Nosferatu film. I think that everybody knows this scene. It's in the history of cinematography. No?
Yeah,
It is. But of course, we have Bela Lugosi, because then later on, films had that added element of not only being silent, but finally being able to explicate themselves vocally. And in that case, the voice of Bela Lugosi, his character, this is the Bela Lugosi version of it all. But then we're going to have to understand where all this comes from. First of all, Nosferatu comes from Dracula, from Bram Stoker. And that's why the Prana Studios of Grau went bankrupt. He had to declare bankruptcy because of what happened with the wife of Bram Stoker. Bram Stoker created all this, but let's say that Dracula, the element, the newish element that he brings in is probably inspiring the character on Vlad the Impaler. The first vampire of sorts that becomes this suave character based mainly on Lord Byron was a book that came out in a publication. There was basically a group of very intelligent people that came together on Lake Geneva one night. They did a lot of laudanum, opium, drugs of various sorts. These people became the creators of Dracula, of Frankenstein, and the whole show. It was like, and so these were the great intelligentsia of the time. And it's important to realize. So in 1797, Goethe brings out a book called The Bride of Corinth. Goethe was a member of the Order of the Illuminati of Adam Weishaupt and a Freemason. So here we have the first mention of a vampire. It says, "From my cave to wander I am forced, still to seek the gods' long severed link, still to love the bridegroom I have lost, and the lifeblood of his heart to drink." In 1813, Lord Byron published another book called The Glaur, in which a Christian soldier slain in Muslim Turkey was cursed to return a vampire. But then there was another situation that came up. Like I said, they all met up in a typical, very British tradition. They were also not only very promiscuous, but they was also very ambiguous in their sexuality. So the vampire doesn't really care if he bites a woman, if he bites a man, or whatever.
He doesn't care about pronouns.
It seems to be very fluid, very fluid. What happened was that Lord Byron, now Lord Byron, for those who don't know Lord Byron, we are talking here about one of the greatest poets, English poets, romantic poet.
I love Lord Byron.
Part of leading figure of the Romantic movement. He of course also knew Shelley, who was very, very well known amongst the Romantic poets. And then you had, of course, these people that were admirers, though, of figures that. Okay, Shelley came out with Frankenstein, but she was also, and you know, some people can say, "Oh, that's cool," but she was also very passionate about Karl Marx. So I don't know. I mean, these people were intellectual. They were doing drugs. They were very liberal in their approach. Very, very progressive. Okay. Now, what happened was that at one point, like I said, they met up and they kind of challenged themselves. And that's how all these tales came out. There was one in particular, fragment of a novel after which Lord Byron produced. Is an unfinished vampire horror story that he produced. And one other guy who was there with Shelley, they basically did a ghost writing contest. So the first real vampire novel entitled The Vampire came out actually with the name of Lord Byron, but it wasn't Lord Byron who wrote it. It was John William Polidori. John William Polidori was an Anglo-Italian like me. He was this is the guy, and he is the guy who really creates the vampire figure like we know it today, like Bram Stoker, then the aristocratic vampire, suave character that corrupts, seduces. This is basically where it comes from. It comes from his version, his short story called The Vampire, which was first published in 1819 and is considered the first modern vampire story. And although, like I said, there was erroneously credited to Lord Byron, later on it was, of course, credited to him, who was the legitimate, they had the. But imagine what these people did. In a night, they conjured all these entities. It was pretty scary. And then from that manifested Frankenstein and the basis for what will later become Dracula, because the vampire will definitely inspire later on Bram Stoker. Bram Stoker, who himself was a Freemason, was very close to all the members of the Golden Dawn. Bram Stoker, who was also a very ambiguous figure, though. Bram Stoker, who probably used Freemasonry for the networking, because he came from Dublin and then moved to London, and Bram Stoker, who created this legendary Count Dracula figure that then it's at the basis, I think, of the vampire fixation. But having said that, it wasn't the only. It wasn't like the vampires were not already in existence.
But he made them a count.
He picked up. Okay. Also, that is very important, because he picked up this figure, also an historical figure, who existed, probably was not necessarily a vampire, but he was definitely a fearless knight, defender of the Christian faith to the extreme of impaling every Turk he could have ever met, thousands of Turks impaled upside down. I'm talking about Vlad the Impaler, who, by the way, is also...
Isn't that song about him? Oh, no, that was the other guy. That's Rasputin. I'm getting all of them confused. Rasputin.
No, we definitely need to do a show on Rasputin, because he is a figure that we need to definitely investigate further, and it's it could be done. This is Vlad, of course, the real Dracula.
Vlad the Dracula.
But let's remember that, of course, then he created in this work of fiction Count Dracula. Count Dracula, Bram Stoker was the manager of a very famous actor at the time called Henry Irving. And Henry Irving was a very particular figure. he looks kind of Dracula-ish. And a lot of there is a lot of inspiration coming from this figure, because he was working for him. He was managing the West End's Lyceum Theatre, Bram Stoker. He was connected to Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes. All these people were, of course, in the Golden Dawn. A lot of these people. He was, Bram Stoker, a Freemason, and he was somebody who was definitely very knowledgeable with the occult, for having in some. This is, but he wasn't not regarded as being so active within Freemasonry. Here there is a whole bio that a popular Masonic site has done on Bram Stoker, the Freemason. He was somebody who created a very, very interesting figure, character. And at this point, though, we would like to dig deeper in other characters also that inspired Bram Stoker. There was another important character, but first of all, I wanted to go back into the real Nosferatu that was connected with the film, Eugen Grosch, because here
is he like something wrong with him? Did he have a disease or something?
What
was wrong with that guy?
With this guy here?
Yeah.
No, well, I mean, this guy was very much a Satanist.
Yeah, that's what's wrong with him.
No,
He's evil.
And the interesting thing is that if we go and see the production of Nicolas Cage of that, the production is called Saturn Production.
Oh, yeah.
And the Fraternitas Saturni is dedicated to Demiurgi, nomine Demiurgi Saturnis, says here in this article by Peter Koenig, who is himself an Illuminati from Switzerland, who writes about the OTO and things like that. Mostly he writes about the OTO. As you can see, Albin Grau here became the first chairman of the Berlin Brethren Seeking Enlightenment, but he was also working in Dr. Mabuse, the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is cited by Nicolas Cage in one of his last movies.
Oh yeah.
He talks about the fact that he wants to show his daughter the cabinet of Dr. Caligari and stuff. Dr. Mabuse, these are very important movies. I mean, considered in the history of cinematography. Like I said, Prana went bankrupt. Prana Film of Berlin went bankrupt. Because since the script of Nosferatu bore such a close resemblance to Bram Stoker's novel Dracula, the ensuing court case over copyright bankrupt Prana Film.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because Prana is also the vampiric energy, nomine demiurgi, when the Fraternity Saturni in 1926, Grosch published the book Satanic Magic. I mean, here we're talking about people who are very serious. You can imagine, I mean, you saw Nosferatu, how dark it was. What do you think? That movie was born out of a group of innocent people? No, it was definitely... and they mixed elements of Thelema with... because the fact is they didn't accept... they accepted the law of Thelema, but they didn't want to be under Aleister Crowley. So the Fraternity Saturni developed independently. Albin Grau apparently stepped back after the 1925 experience, and so he didn't want to be the Grandmaster anymore, and he gave the Grandmastership to Eugene Grosch. And they went on developing also what is vampirism, with a series, and here you have a series of documents about all their practices. And it clearly talks about sex magic and vampirism. So it's pretty specific. I mean, and Saturn, you see Saturn all over the place. Mm. So you think that Nicolas Cage called him production company Saturn?
No,
he knew exactly what he was doing. Very, very clever to... And here you see homosexuality and exoterism. Another was about vampirism and blood magic. And regarding blood magic, like I said earlier, also Rudolf Steiner, who had been involved with these people earlier, a lot earlier, Rudolf Steiner, because you see,
Rudolf Steiner was interested in vampires.
Well, Rudolf Steiner published this book, which I'm going to show you, which is pretty much all about the occult use of blood. It's let me go and... This is a new edition of it that I found here about this book of Steiner, which can explain you his passion for the occult significance of blood. Here we have an esoteric study by Rudolf Steiner. Blood is a very special fluid. Each one of you will doubtless be aware that the title of this lecture is taken from Goethe's Faust. You all know that in this poem we have shown how Faust, the representative of the highest human effort, enters into a pact with the evil powers. And we discuss, of course, the Faustian bargain, for those who are interested in our previous episodes. But here it says blood is a very special, and then it connects with the devil is a foe to the blood. And then here it talks about all the occult links that the blood has here. So what blood itself, if you don't know from the current teaching of natural science. So, I mean, he was pretty knowledgeable about it. And also, this, of course, in connection also with the human sacrifice and all the rest. I mean, people sometimes have like a more innocent view of Rudolf Steiner, like he's some kind of new age guy. No, I think they have this, but he went pretty deep into these subjects. No, read this, for example.
Take man without considering his blood. Take him as a being made up of substance of the surrounding physical world and containing, like the plant,
certain juices which transform into living substance, in which a nervous system gradually become organized. So there is, of course, here a very complex explanation. One thing we must say is that in the whole course of the book, he doesn't really ever mention vampirism. It's like, even if it was very popular back then, and probably to not get into any controversy of sorts, probably didn't want to talk about it. I can think that's the only reason, because everybody was talking about vampirism, even, of course, the unfortunate, which I know that you have studied. And in fact, in psychic self-defense, the unfortunate talks a lot about vampirism.
Yeah, she does.
There is, and maybe we can, as you have studied the unfortunate, maybe you can read.
I am having a hard time reading the computer today. So.
Okay, you think
if you had a book, it'd be different, but I can't.
Okay, here you think. Well, a book actually, yes. Regarding this subject, yes, I can be of help. So here.
You want me to read this?
Yes.
Oh, is this the unfortunate?
Yes, the unfortunate.
The unfortunate, an early 20th century occultist, believed in the reality of vampires, not the 18th century folkloric fiend, the boneless bag of bones, blood shambling from its grave in search of sustenance, and not the Byronic predator of Victorian drawing rooms, but something just as sinister, just as deadly. Fortune's suspicions about the existence of such creatures arose while working with psychiatric patients as a student. Some patients, she noticed, were more exhausting to work with than others. She observed in Psychic Self-Defense, it was not that they were troublesome, but simply that they took it out of us and left us feeling like limp rags at the end of a treatment. The students' observations were reinforced by the nurses who administered electrical treatments to the same patients. They learned that the same patients equally took it out of the electrical machines and that they could absorb the most surprising voltages without turning a hair. Wow, that's pretty interesting. Fortune also noticed similar features evident in relationship characterized by what she called morbid attachments. These relationships between mother and daughter, mother and son, man and woman were marked by the existence of an extremely dominant partner and a weaker dependent partner. The weaker of the pair always shows characteristic symptoms: sensitive temperament, pale complexion, slight build, weakness and suggestibility. It sounds like me.
No, you're not like that. You're not like that at all.
Everybody says I'm like.
Well, but that
like,
is the image that you might project, but you're not like that for sure. So.
Well, you can tell him. Why don't you tell him right now who's the boss around here? Why don't you tell him? Why don't you tell him? Because it ain't him. It might look like it, but it's not what it seems.
It doesn't. It seems a patriarchy, but it's not really.
No, it's not. All right. Knowing what we do of telepathy and the magnetic aura, it appears to me not unreasonable to suppose that in some way which we do not as yet fully understand, the negative partner of such a rapport is shorting onto the positive partner. There is a leakage of vitality going on, and the dominant partner is more or less consciously lapping it up, if not actually sucking it out. Often this draining of energies takes place unintentionally, without the knowledge of the dominant partner. Fortune called this psychic I know I can't say it. Parasitism. In other instances, however, the dominant person is more than a parasite and knows exactly what they are doing. This intentional assault on another's energy is what Fortune called psychic vampirism. Such beings are not unheard of in folklore. Fortune observed. She notes, for example, that in the Philippines, there is a belief in a being called a berberlang. These creatures are human ghouls that must occasionally eat human flesh. When hungry, they hide in the grass and enter a trance, thus liberating their astral bodies, which can fly to the homes of their victims and devour their entrails. The Beberlangs may be heard coming, and as they make a moaning noise, which is loud at a distance and dies away to a feeble moan as they approach. When they are near you, the sound of their wings may be heard, and the flashing of their eyes can be seen dancing like fireflies in the dark. Can I keep on?
Sì, sì.
Fortune theorized that psychic vampires begin as individuals who, for some reason or another, need an inordinate amount of supply of energy to survive. Perhaps beginning as a parasite, they may become aware of their condition and learn techniques to control their astral bodies. Upon the death of their bodies, these vampires can remain alive in their astral forms.
Well,
and
that is the intention, is to remain alive in their astral forms. That's why they apparently want to attract all this energy from their victims, willingly or just they do it even unwillingly. I said, in the sense that it's something that can come natural to them and they are conscious about it, but in some cases they can also be unconscious. However, this is very important what you say, so continue.
Okay. Upon the death of their bodies, these vampires can remain alive in their astral forms and continue to prey upon the living. These victims, if brought to death by the loss of energy due to this predation, may themselves become astral vampires in turn. Fortune related a story of such an incident in which a young man was wasting away and showing all the signs of being victimized by a vampire. The boy was exposed to the menace through frequent visits with his cousin, and who had returned from the war in France and suffered from shell shock. The cousin had been sent home from the front after he was caught in the act of necrophilia. According to the adept, Fortune identified as Z, who personally examined the case. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Some Eastern European troops had been brought to the Western Front, and among those were individuals with traditional knowledge of black magic, for which Eastern Europe has always enjoyed a sinister reputation among occultists. These men, getting killed, knew how to avoid going to the second death, that is to say, the disintegration of the astral body.
See, they're avoiding the disintegration of the astral body. That's what they try to do.
And maintain themselves in the etheric double by vampirizing the wounded. Now, vampirism is contagious. The person who is vampirized, being depleted of vitality, is a psychic vacuum, himself absorbing from anyone he comes across in order to refill his depleted resources of vitality. He soon learns by experience the tricks of a vampire without realizing their significance. And before he knows where he is full-blown vampire himself, vampirizing others. The earthbound soul of a vampire sometimes attaches itself permanently to one individual if it succeeds in making a functioning vampire of him, systematically drawing its etheric nutriment from him. For since he is in his turn is resupplying himself from others, he will not die from exhaustion as a victim of vampires do in the ordinary way.
Now, it could be also a rare pathology that is called clinical vampirism. Vampirism can be, some people say that vampirism can also be a series of pathologies that in those days they didn't know about and they interpreted in this way. However, here you see the actual interpretation in the psychic way is much more accurate and gives us a real understanding. However, the legends of vampirism, of course, it's can be connected to the bite of animals. In that case, rabies. It can be connected to, there is a particular illness also, which at times they talk about, I think I wrote down that because it's porphyria, which is at times a sensationalized myth. At times people say that it is where the vampire myths originated, with a real blood disorder. Porphyria, it's at times, like I said, it's indicated that it might be in some cases the inspiration for vampirism. But I tend to think that the interpretation of the psychic vampirism is much more correct rather than this physical. When you are ignorant of the metaphysical, ignorant of the esoteric, ignorant of the occult. You want to find a physico-chemical, materialistic answer to what that myth or that particular story is. So this medical condition that they talk about, you see here it says, the article, vampire myths originate with a real blood disorder, and then it explained the source of the porphyria as this. But like I said, not everybody agrees that this specific illness is the one. Other people think it might be forms of tuberculosis that have produced certain specifics in also in the look of the person, the pale, the this, the that. But for example, there is also some who call it a sensationalized myth, and I'm going to show you here. So there is not really an agreement at an academic, scientific level on what generated the actual vampirism concept or myth. We are trying today, of course, to show you the various takes on this subject. We would like to be as clear as possible. Porphyrian vampirism, a myth sensationalized, you see, and then they say why it's been sensationalized, and the inspiration, it was not until the 1980s, however, that porphyrians were postulated as the inspiration for the myth of vampirism. So it's not such an old thing. While instead you have then tuberculosis also for some as a possible candidate. Tuberculosis resembles also accounts of vampirism. Lupus erythematosus. It's a but let me show at this point Bella Lugosi in the trailer, because how can we not show Bella Lugosi? We have to show Bella Lugosi.
You have to.
This is a very original trailer, so let's go.
I was looking in the mirror. Its reflection covers the whole room. But I cannot see you.
No, guys, it's a pretty shitty copy, but that's it. If you want to try to avoid copyright infringements, at times you have to get these copies.
I like that.
Yeah?
Can you say it too? Run to suck your blood.
I can't die with all that blood on my conscience.
And it's beautiful girl, women who are meant madness.
Oh, what a tragic event.
I am Dracula. A moment ago, I stumbled upon a most amazing phenomenon. Something so incredible, I mistrust my own judgment. Look.
Dracula. The very mention of the name brings to mind things so evil, so fantastic, so degrading. You wonder if it isn't all a dream, a nightmare.
Rats. Thousands. Millions of them.
But no, this is no dream. This is Dracula, the original terrifying story of a maniac and a man who lived after death, lived on human blood, took the form of a vampire bat, and lured innocent girls to a fate truly worse than death.
Dracula? What's he done to you today? Tell me.
One thing can be said about Bela Lugosi. He was from Romania. He was actually from those areas where the whole thing, the whole legend generates from. I mean, it wasn't just. He was the original in a way, though of course the Nosferatu version is also very scary, and we have discussed it also because of its connection with the Illuminati in Germany, because the Illuminati are from Germany. We can say that definitely this version is also very interesting.
I am Dracula.
Well, it was.
Say it like that. I am Dracula.
I am Dracula.
You know what it is? Because when I met you, you kind of look like him.
Oh God!
And then, like, you wear a suit, and like, I never met any guys that wore suits all the time like you. And then you wear a suit, and then you would say, "My dear," and so,
oh, my dear, let
so
me
it's like-
drink your blood.
No, that part I don't like.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
have this thing about veins and blood.
Yeah.
And I hate it, so I can't even look at blood. I could never be in one.
well, Bela Lugosi definitely needed to be featured in today's show, though we are discussing the legends and stories of real vampires here at the Leo Zagami show. Of course, another way of supporting a show is also purchasing our books. My latest book is volume 9. We have also many other interesting books, including Christie's books, which are on sale. You can find them on Amazon or by going on leozagami.com. You find the links to all my latest books, which, like I said, it's a way of supporting the show. Can you read again the sponsors of today?
Then you get smarter because you learn a lot. Daniel Estes, Margarizada Minta, Bjorn Vogel, Philippe Belair, Bruce Kodish, and Kavan Fadi. I hope I said that right. It's such a nice name. Kavan Fadi. So, okay, I think I said it right.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for your donations.
Thank you so much for your donations and for believing in us and letting us work further in unveiling and exploring the Illuminati occult. And next week we will have another great show. In the meantime, we continue, of course, with more tales that surround this figure of the vampire between reality and legend.
There's so much like that has to do with cinematography though in the movies, because like everybody has their favorite vampire movie that they watch, and most people,
and that is really an interesting element that you brought up here, because you see it's about creating a sort of egregore, and Hollywood really helped amplifying this egregore of sorts. It's like we said, the psychic vampires need, it's like most of the time they don't even realize what they're doing. But the psychic vampire, it's basically continues to draw energies from the astral and physical bodies of the remaining living beings, but in a sense it gains through immortality by creating a sort of egregore.
Facebook is a psychic vampire.
Absolutely.
And I'm not going on Facebook anymore, if anybody's wondering.
Absolutely.
I gave up. I turned my back on all my social media.
that is a very good point.
It is.
It's a very good point. The social networks have created an egregore, and that egregore can be also a vampiric egregore. It's like the egregore is the axis that is born as soon as the forces come together and form an individualized movement. When you put a triangle of 3 vampires together, just like this is what the vampires do, they connect psychically and they unite in what is an egregore. An egregore of a vampiric group is an egregore that, and of course, it doesn't have to be an official vampire group, though they are official vampire groups. They actually publish books, and they don't even hide what they are all about. They are all over the internet, and you can find them, and there is all kinds of vampiric arts and initiation to vampiric arts that one is presented even on the internet. It's like becoming fashionable almost to join the vampire community. Now, while in the 90s it was mainly a kind of Dungeon and Dragon kind of situation, now it's becoming a more occult. I mean, it's always been a very occultistic, but here the initiation into the vampiric arts. It's not a joke. They go very much in detail. True versus Hollywood vampirism. Please read.
I can try. There is no doubt that vampires have been exciting admirers since they first made it to the silver screen. This has led to many thirsty individuals who would love to drink in the excitement, if not the actual blood of supposed victims. Playing at being a vampire by drinking someone's blood during sexual orgies will not bring you closer to being a real vampire. That's no reason to stop, however. False vampirism has led to many silly concepts, such as vampires really being space aliens or vampires really being fallen angels.
Now, interesting the fact that one of the guy who coined the term space vampires was actually Colin Wilson.
And Buck Rogers, because they had this psychic vampire on Buck Rogers, and he used to suck all the energy out of all the victims and all the pretty girls on Buck Rogers.
Okay. No, but there is actually a link I found to an even more disturbing form of, let me see if I can manage, because it's possible I can't from here. Let me see if I find it, it's possible to open it, because might not be possible to open for this, but maybe yes. The Black Art of Vampirism. I went across this book some time ago, and what I saw in it was really disturbing. I mean, it was like the fact that they knew what they were doing, and they also had very much this attitude. I'm gonna have to get maybe, because this browser here, I'm not on Scribd on this, so I can't really show it to you guys. But yeah, it's actually a book that circulates. They even sell it. It's incredible, and they say, how to manipulate the masses and how they feel superior as vampires. Of course, they intend vampirism as a psychic operation, so not necessarily as a blood lore thing. Though there is then, of course, those people who are very theatrical, who like to push things in a certain way, and just have a laugh if you want. Here they are.
I am the vampire Jack Townsend, and I am a real-life, living vampire. You're probably sitting there right now asking yourself, vampires? Are they really real?
We are asking ourselves, what do you think, Christy? Who is this guy? Who is this joke?
I believe in witches, and I believe in ghosts and demons. But vampires?
Vampire?
Well, I have an answer for you. Not in the way that you've been taught. When you hear vampire, you think about Count Dracula, the deep widow's peak.
No, but you have to think about this guy who seems a little bit, I don't know.
He's just playing a role.
It's like these are role players. I mean, going along with, like I said, in the 90s, Dungeon and Dragon kind of situation.
Yeah, he's kind of stuck in the 90s still.
Yeah. And a cape. But no, we are not the fictitious characters of Bram Stoker's novel.
Oh, no, he's real.
We existed long before
he existed on time.
Was ever recharacterized into the vampire Dracula. Now, there are some similarities, but there are many more differences. For example, garlic. Can we enter a house without invitation? holy water, crucifixes, and vervain. Are any of these things legitimate? No! I love garlic on pizza, and pasta, and garlic bread.
Pizza?
I don't want to
Garlic
watch
bread
the
is so
doofus
good.
anymore.
Okay.
And I can walk into...
What's the stupidest? Now, regarding pizza, Christy today made a cacio e pepe with salami. I
It
don't
was
know.
so good.
I think even the vampires will like this one.
It didn't have garlic on it.
I didn't have garlic
It
on it.
was so good. That pizza was good.
That's right. Here it is. It's like you create a cream with pecorino romano, and you make this great
With mozzarella and
mozzarella in it.
on it.
Oh, it's good. Then this was pizza number 1. Then with Christy, we made pizza number 2, which that
was
it's
the
4
mar-
cheeses. This
Yeah,
one,
it's
no?
4
4 cheeses. So a little bit of blue cheese, a little bit of provolone, a little bit of blue cheese, a little bit of provolone, and then mozzarella, and then pecorino. 4 cheese.
That was good too.
Nice, huh? This is becoming a master pizza.
Oh, pizzaiola.
Pizzaiola. While instead I cooked spaghetti alla gricia yesterday. Huh? Want to check this out, guys?
That's pork on it.
After all this blood, these idiots, at least you can see some serious stuff. This
Americans
is
might not
guanciale with
understand this pasta.
well, this is a particular pasta. It's very good, I tell you.
It is good.
And it's good.
It's like putting bacon on spaghetti, guys.
No, it's not that.
It's a little bit like putting bacon.
No, you need wine, and you cook it with the wine. You cook it with the guanciale. Use the fat that comes out of the guanciale. How was it?
It was good.
It was good. Okay,
good.
after all this proper food, we can go back to our vampires. Because, like I said, vampirism, it's a reality. And it's a reality. This is the vampire court of New Orleans. You want to have a laugh?
I went to New Orleans because I was reading that book by Anne Rice, Interview with a Vampire, in the 90s. And so we were on our way to Disney World. And
but watch these guys.
I want to tell my story.
No, please tell it. Don't laugh with these people. Vampires.
Don't interrupt me.
Okay.
So now I forgot what I was saying.
That you went to New Orleans.
Yeah, so
with the vampire.
I was on my way from I think Colorado to and we visited my mother in Corpus Christi, and then we were gonna go to Disney World in Florida, and so we went along Louisiana and we went through New Orleans, and I wanted to see because I was reading that book, Interview with a Vampire, and I saw New Orleans, and it was just, really, if you read that book and you go to New Orleans, you really feel like New Orleans is such a different kind of a place. It's really interesting. I didn't get to stay very long,
let's remember
but it was really interesting.
But New Orleans is also filled with magic, voodoo.
But there was mansions, and it was just really in cemeteries.
And what you mentioned is based on a real figure, the figure of Jacques de Saint-Germain. Now, he's a legendary vampire originating in the folklore of 20th century New Orleans. And in the local legend, he's associated with the Count de Saint-Germain. The Count de Saint-Germain, who is this legendary immortal Illuminati, who initiated also Count Cagliostro. This is basically the Count de Saint-Germain.
So she wrote it after him?
Well,
it's based on that character.
The Jacques de Saint-Germain, the character in New Orleans, they have this character. They say that the guy showed up from France out of nowhere because, of course, that was a French colony before it became part of the United States, and that he started to make these parties and to lure women into his vampiric cult. Now, we don't know if it was Saint-Germain. In theory, should have been dead at this point, but apparently he was still alive. So we don't really know if it's just a legend or there is some truth. Definitely they talk about this character, and it's part of the of the New Orleans folk culture. Saint-Germain is a urban legend in New Orleans, and there is supposed sightings of him that the locals say they have seen. And according to this legend, Saint-Germain appeared throughout history, having never aged. And the legend has inspired all kinds of things. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily it inspired that movie, but in reality, the kind of character seems to be very much, I mean, it's New Orleans, it's connected, no? And the legend of Saint-Germain was features also Mystery Decoded in the season 1 episode Vampires of New Orleans. But like I said earlier, there is some real vampires who claim they are vampires in New Orleans today. So let's go and check them out, because they, I mean, it's pretty hilarious. So these characters are pretty hilarious. I mean, and CNN talks about them. So let's see how they describe them. Let's see what kind of dorks. Okay. Here we have CNN talking about inside the world of real life vampires in New Orleans and Atlanta. We know that Atlanta is, of course, the headquarters, one of the headquarters of CNN. And here is when Marvin Lore was being fitted for his first set of fangs, a switch within him flipped on. Something just came to the surface and everything felt right. For once.
Don't make the voice.
For once in my life.
No.
What?
Don't make the voice of these ever.
No, but I want to show, if I manage, I want to show here, I want to, just a second, if I can manage to show you guys from another browser, the actual person who is aiming to direct this court of vampires, which I showed earlier in a naked swimming pool party in New Orleans. Here he is. I knew that you would laugh, but this is just like other guy. Yeah, these are like posers more. So some of them look like.
Oh,
more
he
like...
looks a little. It's more. Well, not really. I take it back.
What does he
Never
look?
mind. He's got the contacts on and all that.
Yeah, pretty much like posers. So this is the head. You see. Merticus is an expert in languages. Here he is, you know, and that's and then I went actually on his Facebook group page, and there was all this group of New Orleans, what people get wrong about vampires. Okay, so let's read this, Christy.
Okay, the enduring popularity of fictional vampires means that
Merticus
and others must constantly clarify that they're not like the nocturnal bloodsuckers that continue to entertain and terrify us. In fact, Merticus says that many human vampires remain out of the public eye due to the many misconceptions of what it means to be vampires and fear or reprisal from the people they know.
And then he says he's educating people that vampire is an amalgamation of physical, mental, and spiritual attributes, and vampires are largely productive members of society.
They sound like Democrats.
But they are Democrats. I mean, they are on CNN. What do you expect? Today, we went through the whole long story of this, and then, you know, both. I mean, you have the whole thing here about these vampires, you know, and it says he doesn't wear fangs or got clothes, and Lord describes his nighttime style as cross between snazzy suit wearer and 80s rock and roll. Then, of course, you have this is from Interview for the Vampire, the TV adaptation of it. There's more to life than vampirism. But like I said, they're all part of that. I mean, of course, they will glorify them on TV, on CNN, on the media. Like the media nowadays glorify the Satanic Temple that just did an altar this week in the capital of Iowa, in Des Moines. It's just insane. But this,
I'll get Rambo.
But this is what is happening. It is a glorification of evil. But I would like for Christy, before we end, to read a couple of passages of The On Fortune that I have picked up here from Psychic Self-Defense, which I think is one of the most important and detailed about psychic vampirism.
But you want me to read it from there, and I can't. Is it
Because-
here?
No, I wanted to leave this passage here.
I can try.
No, but it's no problem. There is one passage that I wanted to just read, but I think that we have probably gone through.
This is a cool book.
Yeah, this is actually
This is
actually a book that cites The Unfortunate. It's definitely a very good book by Dr. Gregory L. Reese, and of course this is a subject that probably will need many more hours to discuss in its entirety. However, I think that today we definitely gave you a good look of and I did it also with original documents, using original documents from the Illuminati that are still active within the frames of what they see as vampirism. This, for example, document Philosophie et Occultisme Opposé is very much because it's a manual du vampirisme énergétique, manual of energetic vampirism by the Grand Magister Nago du Tempo d'Azot. It was published in 2011, and this is a Illuminati style book. And of course, it starts with Lilith, because Lilith is a demon, but is also a vampire. And so Lilith it was there before all the others, and it's definitely the goddess of the vampires. Thank you for tuning in today, for following us in our in-depth investigation. Rambo is here, and the dance starts for the great closing.
Everybody dance. Dance, baby. Oh, you have to dance. He's whining. Don't whine, baby.
Yeah, but once you dressed him as Docula.
I did.
And
I have a picture. Hold on.
You have a picture?
Yeah.
Yes, you have a picture. Pick it up. Here it is. He was Docula.
That was
This is like a long time ago. Here we are, Docula. You see, he even had the teeth. No, you put the teeth on him.
No, those are real. He's got fangs.
That was Rambo Docula. Take care, guys.
He was 4 months old here.
4 months old. There was.
And
Which year was this? This was 2008.
When I first got him.
Wow. When I saw this pic the first time, I thought that Christy was a goth.
No,
it was Halloween.
It was Halloween, and my kids, I like to dress everybody up and go down and walk downtown. So that's what we did. In the town that we lived in, it was like a festive thing. It had nothing to do with the bad stuff.
I know. And it was really cute to see this cloak that you put on Rambo. Well, thank you so much, guys. God bless you all. Have a great Sunday and a great week ahead. See you next week. Keep on supporting us and our books. And I hope that you enjoyed these legends and stories of real vampires.
Bye, everyone. See you next week.
You can dance.
Everybody dance. Woo-hoo. Everybody dance. Okay, he's getting mad at me. He's going to bite me.
And that's all. Next week, a little bit more.